welcome back.
Welcome back. Hope everybody is having a great day wherever you are and whatever day you're listening to this on.
Episode 4. So excited. This week was a good one, guys. We had a lot of stuff happen.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
It's literally an understatement.
Yeah, so we had Lori's trial started. What we've been waiting for, the main event, started this week.
Wait, also, your nails match my nails.
I know, because I told you when Stephanie does black nails, Gianna does black nails. Except my kids interrupted me, so I have to finish this hand today.
And I'm
gonna
broke
do
one.
Stephanie broke hers.
Alrighty.
And I'm gonna paint mine. I'm gonna put smiley faces on mine, but the scary smiley faces that I do.
I love that. I love
Right?
that.
Love that.
That fits
Love that
the
for me.
podcast motif to a T.
Love that. And I even got a vape that has a smiley face on it.
I love it.
Too.
I love it. Oh. Anyway.
Sidebar.
Sidebar.
There's been a lot of those too. Sidebars. We're gonna talk about the case or the trial. And Stephanie and I have talked, and we have all of this information on the Boards app, guys. We keep telling you about this Boards app because that's where all of our information is. And so when we do these podcasts, instead of just reiterating all of the facts to you and just going through everything, which will take 67 hours and it won't be very interesting, we are going to pick out our main points of things that we are learning, like new information. And that's what we're going to do. So,
yes,
just so you guys know, you're not going to get like the full rundown. If you want the full rundown, download the Boards app. I will link everything, as I do always, in the description so you guys know how to get that, where to go, all the things. But we heard from Melanie Gibb and Zulema, and those were kind of like our star witnesses. We also heard from Detective Hermosillo, who has been the main detective in this case like since it started.
Right.
And he was the one that was there that like found Tylee and JJ's bodies. So we are going to talk briefly about that as well. I don't want to start off with that because it's kind of a bummer for the beginning.
It's a big downer. It really is. And it's like tough to talk about. And like if you haven't had your breakfast yet and like you're driving to work, like that might not be how you want to start your day per se.
No.
It was rough.
And before we start talking about it, we'll give a nice trigger warning and very clear warning that we are going to start talking about it. So if you don't want to listen to it, you can turn it off at that point. So let's get into Melanie Gibb, who was a big ass letdown.
The worst. The absolute worst. I was so pumped for her testimony, G. Like all I wanted to hear was this woman lay down the axe. Like this was going to be the first time that this woman has seen Lori Vallow since this all went down. Like since the recorded phone call that we talked about back when we were giving you guys the background. Like these two women haven't seen each other since. They were going to come. It was a showdown. It was going to be the showdown for the century, and it ended up being like a wet towel. Like it was a huge letdown. She like left out a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know if she was lying or if she was scared, and like I can imagine being scared in that situation, but like she was downplaying her role in this case and in the actions of Lori and Chad by 1,000.
I know.
So disappointing.
That's what it is, right? It was disappointing because Melanie Gibb was so far in it that she was the one that we were like, yes, she has morals, she has standards. She was, brought all of this stuff about JJ to the police, and she recorded a phone call and helped the police, and that we thought that she was going to come in here and she was just going to blow the lid wide open on like every single thing that Chad and Lori did. And she just was like, yeah, I kind of knew them. Basically was like, you would think that she didn't even know them. Or like that she was like Zulema on the outside.
Right.
And Zulema shocked the shit out of me.
Drop the hammer. This girl dropped the hammer. Like, Zulema had the tea left, right, front, back, boiling. She brought it, and I was like, girl,
She did
hello?
not hold back. She did not hold back. And so while I'm so grateful for that, like I'm nervous. I'm worried about the relation. Like Melanie Gibb's relation to Lori was her best friend, and the prosecution set her up that way to be the closest person to them. And they kind of set Zulema up as somebody who was like on the fence of like, do I believe this? Do I not believe this? And I think Zulema's role was more of like, and this is what I think she was thinking in her brain. I think that she knew a lot of this was like crazy, but she's like, on the off chance that this is real, I want to be included. On the on the more chance that it's not real, I want to have plausible deniability
Right,
in this fact.
right.
So
Like, in case these people are actually in a cult, I want to be like, oh, but like, I really didn't believe them the whole time. I was just like there. Like,
right. But who are we gonna now? We got to think about the jury. And so um I have said before on a live that I'm worried about the jury. I'm worried about, and I just want to explain this is why, and this is my opinion, why I'm worried is because when we're hearing these tiny, minute facts, like the jury doesn't know that Melanie Gibb held back or that they haven't heard anything else or known about anything else like we do. We know this
right.
case backwards and forwards, inside and out. Excuse me. They don't know that, and it's a lot of crazy shit being thrown at them.
It's so much. I mean, they're talking about aliens and demons and zombies and meeting with Jesus Christ, like literally meeting Jesus Christ. So, like, that was part of the testimony, was that they had a meeting with Jesus Christ. So, um, it's just,
And they have to prove conspiracy.
yeah,
They are not even proving that she did it with her bare hands. So it's like this really hard thing to prove with this really crazy case that these jurors, I'm sure, are also nervous of like, am I gonna make the right decision on this? Because it's like a sci-fi movie, like a really bad one.
yeah.
And that's the only thing that I wanted to just mention is why I'm so disappointed about Melanie was because she was set up to be the like star witness and the closest to Lori, and I think we really needed her because she was the closest to give this amazing testimony that Zulema did. Now, I'm not discounting what Zulema said. I'm just thinking about in the jury's brain, they're like, well, she wasn't really their best friend. So like, does she really know? I would be thinking that.
Well, to be honest with you, I think it came off that maybe Zulema was closer to Melanie than Melanie was, and vice versa. I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah.
but like the way the testimony played out, and we'll get into a little bit of it, and we're gonna pull some parts of it that we think is relevant and super important for you to pay attention to. But through the testimony, it almost feels like Zulema had more of an inside look, because she testifies that she knew Chad and was close to Chad for years prior to um, Lori and Melanie Gibb coming into their lives. I know that Melanie says that she knew Chad prior to Lori coming into his life too, but it seems as if Zulema had a closer relationship to Chad than Melanie did. So I
Yep.
think that it maybe we misread it all this whole time. Maybe Zulema really was more integral to this than we expected, and maybe it wasn't like Alex, them giving Zulema to Alex. Maybe it was Alex being given to Zulema. Like, maybe Zulema was the person here that was more important than Alex, Lori's brother.
Oh yeah.
Instead of Zulema being gifted to Alex, maybe Alex was being gifted to Zulema. Maybe she was more of a main character than we thought she was.
Oh yeah, they kissed her ass. Like they made her feel they manipulated her to try and make her feel like, and I think that they knew that they could manipulate her in a way that they couldn't manipulate Melanie Gibb, because I think Melanie Gibb had more of like street smarts or common sense, not as innocent, not as naive as Zulema is or was. And I think that that is what we missed, where because we didn't know, right? We're not in these relationships or
Right.
know about these people. We weren't there. So it's really goes to show you that I just think the prosecution should have set it up the way in that way. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
I don't think that they set it up. They set Melanie up to be this like best friend, closest person when they knew Zulema's testimony and they knew Melanie's testimony. Like how could you set her up to be Zulema should have went first, then Melanie Gibb. Like I but I digress on that. It doesn't matter because it is what it is. And also I'm not a lawyer, so we all know that. All right,
It's
so
all
when
fine.
yeah, it's all good. It's all good. When Lori sees Melanie, Lori seems to in the courtroom not really like want to make eye contact with her, but also Melanie doesn't either. Like they note the people that are in the courtroom note that it's like Melanie doesn't is actively avoiding eye contact with
Yes.
Lori. And I think Lori is even more so when she starts to avoid the eye contact, starts to like stare her down.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the
But
audacity.
I think that that has a lot to do with her how her testimony played out. I think that that may have affected her comfortability in the courtroom because I know from personal experience that the prosecutors prepared her left and right, up and down, back and forth for every possible question she could have been asked. They went over everything with her multiple times, multiple ways, and it all went out the window when she sat down and she saw her former best friend sitting at that table. And that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah, I don't think that it was easy for anybody in the situation. I mean, Zulema clearly didn't give a shit. She was like, okay, I'm
No, she
telling
was all about
everybody everything.
it. She was like, let me tell you something right now about this hoe over here. This is what happened. This is
She
what happened. She's
literally,
sleeping with a married man.
yeah.
She's married herself. They all are doing whatever they're doing because they were apparently married in 17 different thousand other lives.
Zulema went hard.
But Melanie, back to Melanie.
Yeah, Melanie. Back to Melanie. Back to the wet blanket. So she kind of, when she talks about Lori and Chad meeting, she's like, oh, yeah. Lori said that Chad told her they had been married in another time period, and she believed it. When we know, just from the case, that, like, that is way underplaying what happened that day and proven by Zulema. But I just wanted to point that out is, like, that's literally what she said. She said, but then she says to her that Lori wasn't clear in her understanding at that point, and that she was told that she told Melanie that she had been married to Moroni and told her this before she had met Chad. So, but we know from Zulema that Lori was like talking about it in the car and was
Right.
like looking up the scripture, wanting them to look up the scriptures and all of these things that like that's severely downplaying the situation.
So for those listening and watching, what we have during these two people's testimony is a recounting of the exact same events of the meetings between the original meeting between Chad and Lori. There's like a little mini sleepover party that happens at like Lori's house. There's castings that take place, which we'll go over. And they're both telling the same story. And Melanie is giving us white bread, right? She's giving us no facts. Like, oh, this took place on September 1st, 2018. And Zulema is going, well, let me tell you exactly what happened. Here is my journal. I wrote specifically what happened on this day, this time. I drew pictures. I wrote down who was there, what they said, what they did. I'm giving you all the specifics. So, like, we have the exact same the exact same story, but we're getting the Cliff Notes version from Melanie, and then we're getting the actual novel from Zulema. And I'm not sure why, like, it turned out that way. I'm not sure why Melanie is downplaying everything so much, and Zulema is like, I don't care at all. Like, I don't give an F. We are going to, I'm protecting nobody. But that's why we're like, as we're telling this, we're going back and forth, and we're like, Melanie said this, and then Zulema said this, because one gave us Cliff Notes and one gave us Jane Austen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then also,
that's how it's going.
yeah, while you were talking, I had a thought and I was like, why would it be different? And I realized Melanie Gibb, from all that I know, and it hasn't been mentioned, is not a mother. And Zulema is. Zulema has children. And I think that that has made a difference in two testimonies. One is very surface level, like giving what she just like the bare minimum, but one is a mother who like feels as a mother about these children and is like, I'm going to burn your life down
Right.
because you're horrible.
Right.
And
That could
Melanie Gibb,
100% be it.
right? Because I'm just like, when you were talking, I was like, what are the differences between these two women? Taking Lori and Chad out of it. And
Yeah.
that's it. And I'm like, okay, it makes sense because I
Yeah.
think that that's why, you know, they didn't, like you were saying about jury selection, like they wouldn't want mothers on the jury because of that exact reason.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
there we go. So, and the other thing too is that Melanie Gibb says that about the meeting that Lori talked about, or Lori, that Stephanie talked about in the how they all met at the house and they like had this like little mini sleepover. Melanie says Chad could have been there. She didn't remember, but they interacted that weekend. But when Zulema talks, she recounts going outside with Chad and Lori. They were playing basketball, direct quotes of what Lori said to Chad while they were outside. Like clearly Chad was very much there and like very much involved.
Lori says to Chad, "Why are you scared of me?" at one point.
Right.
And then they all then like Lori and Chad go and like secret themselves away together, like briefly, where he gives her some blessing. Like, I don't know what that means. I mean, like I know what it means in like the LDS religion, but like I don't know if blessing was code word in this situation or if it actually was a blessing in regards to the LDS faith.
Does that
Um,
not make you, and I was talking about this the other day, I was like, does that, when I hear the word like that Chad is giving a blessing, I like my whole body like has a reaction to it. It's like sounds so disgusting because Chad is doing it. Like to me, if it was anybody else and they told me that, I'd be like, oh, that's so nice. But because it's Chad Daybell, I'm like, ugh. It
yeah.
sounds like he's like freaking like molesting somebody or something.
Yeah,
It's like very,
it's not a comfortable thought at all,
no.
like
No.
whatsoever. But it's wild because even if we backtrack it to like the day that these two meet, right? And like Melanie's like, oh, they like barely talked, and then Zulema's like, oh my god, Lori like threw herself at this man, like was like flirting uncontrollably. Like it's just the differences are so crazy.
Yeah.
Can't. But the sleepover party is like wild. Wild.
I just, and it's so, what the even more wild thing is that like in their religion, I don't think that you're supposed to spend like sleeping time away from your significant other with another woman even in like the house.
That would be a big no.
Right.
That
Let
would be
alone
a
they're
big
getting
no.
it on in the back.
Big no. Big no.
Okay, so do you want to talk about how the temple that we learned
Oh my
about
god,
the
this is
temple
one of
meeting?
my absolute favorite things that
I know.
Melanie talks about. And like probably the only thing that Melanie talks about that I thought was like any
Yeah.
part of relevance. So the weekend that I believe it's the weekend of the sleepover party, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Let's see.
I think it's the weekend of the sleepover party.
Yeah, mhm, the
Okay.
Super Bowl
So
party.
they have this, like, I'm calling it a sleepover party, but, like, there's a conference that's going on, but they all end up back at Lori's house, and they all sleep there, so I'm calling it the weekend of the sleepover party, all
It
right?
is that. I think it is that weekend.
So, Lori and Chad sneak away, okay? Now remember, they're both still married, okay? And they sneak away to the temple, all right? The LDS temple, all right? And I don't know if you've ever seen LDS temples, but they're gorgeous. They are absolutely stunning. They're beautiful. They sneak away to the temple, and they go into the temple, and they want to be sealed. Now, they are both married to other people, and in the LDS faith, when you are sealed to your husband or wife, you are sealed for all eternity. Okay. Past lives, present life, future lives, you are sealed for eternity. Okay. And that is a very serious, they take it very seriously. Okay. And you cannot be unsealed. Okay. And there are specific sealing rooms, SEALING, not like sealing. It's like SEALING. Okay. So there's a process to being sealed. There's a specific place in the temple in which you are sealed. Okay. It's done by the priesthood. There are specific clothing that you must wear. It is a very specific process. And you also cannot be sealed / married to another when it takes place. So Chad and Lori get sealed in the waiting room, like the lobby, the foyer of the temple. Okay. And the angel Moroni and Jesus Christ are there. Okay.
Jesus Christ himself of
Jesus Christ
Nazareth.
himself is there and says, it's totally fine that you are married and sealed to another. I am going to seal you because this is a reunification. Okay. And they do this in the waiting room. And because being sealed is for all time and eternity, Jesus Christ says it's cool because it's a reunification of your souls. And I am deceased at this because I I don't know why, but I really enjoy studying and learning about other religious cultures and other religious faiths. I find it to be very interesting. I like to research these things before I speak on them because I like to be very respectful. Um, so the mere fact that they are, number one, doing this in the waiting room of the temple, okay, and not in the proper procedures, in the proper clothing, in the proper with the priesthood, and with and in the way, like,
I just
bless your
don't
heart.
understand. Right. What I don't understand too is that at this point, when everybody that is in their circle, because they do say like that they only told the people in their small circle, but everybody in the circle has been an LDS member for their whole lives, at this point was not like, mm, are you sure? Like the red flags, like Lori was walking around and Chad in like a dress made of red flags at this point.
And I think, um, like Zulema says also that, like Lori tells her that she was a witness with Jesus and had a physical conversation with Jesus Christ. And to Zulema, this was very significant because that's the highest spiritual experience a human being can have. So, like, basically, Lori was going around name dropping the big JC and say, and was like, "This is how I'm gonna get these people." Was like, "I'm just gonna go around and be like, yo, I spoke with Jesus, and you're all gonna like be in awe of that, and this is how I'm gonna get you." Because she knew that everyone would take that very seriously. Because in that is very it's a very spiritual, it's the highest spiritual experience a human can have. So she's out there
I
having
just think
brunch with JC and like having mimosas, and
oh.
everybody's out here like, "Oh my gosh, she
But don't you
holds the
think that they
priesthood,"
need
which is
r-
impossible.
right. But don't you think they need a better vetting system
One would think.
for for like I don't know. There's like is there not like some way to substantiate that this person really talked to Jesus? Like I don't know.
Right,
I
but
just
here's
feel
the
like
thing, right? What if she did? What if she did? And
yeah,
then everybody goes around and says, "No, you didn't," but she really did.
I know, I get it, I understand, and, like, especially me like, as a psychic medium, like, I get it, like, people think that I'm either amazing or I'm a crack, like, nut job, okay? I get it, I understand, like, it's either you believe or you don't, and clearly the LDS people believe that everybody in their church is good and well, and that they are not going to lie about something so sacred to their religion. I just feel like coupled with saying that like Jesus Christ reunified us, knowing that like for thousands and thousands of years, that is not what everybody else that's spoken to Jesus says can happen. We should have been like, well,
The
do we think
waiting
Lori
room the
really
waiting room really should have tipped everybody off there,
right?
but
And not having their like pastor or whoever like be there doing it, like it's like a ceremony.
the members
They
of the
went in for
priesthood,
a
yeah.
they went in
Yeah.
for a quickie in Vegas. That's basically what they did. This is the
The
equivalent
equivalent,
is they
yes. Yes, the
they got
equivalent
married
of
in Vegas.
that, for sure.
So
But,
that's
like,
why.
then it starts to get, like then we start to get into the witchcraft portion, okay? And what's really funny is that when Melanie is being cross-examined, the defense attorney is like, "So, basically, you're practicing witchcraft." Like, verbatim, "Basically, you're practicing witchcraft." And she's like, "Absolutely not." And he's like, "But you were performing spells." And she's like, "No." And he's like, "But you were." And she's like, "That's not what I said at all." But,
She's like,
like,
"No, they were prayers." And I'm like,
they were prayers.
"So
No, you were chanting in a circle, holding hands, doing casting demons out of people's bodies. But, like, that's not but so this was
right.
something else that we learned from Melanie's testimony that Zulema talks about too, is these castings that they would do on people. If you wanna go into them, because
Yeah.
this is another one of my favorite parts of the testimonies.
Yeah, so Chad told Chad told Lori that Charles was overtaken by a demon
3 times.
3 times. We'll get into
You'll get there.
Oh my god. Like a tickle in my throat or something.
It's
So,
the demons.
it's the demons, we're talking about them, they're trying to inhabit me.
You have 2
Um,
minutes.
I have 2 minutes. That's so funny, I can't. So, Chad told them that they were going to cast out the demon because the demon already took over the body. Charles's spirit is like floating around in the air somewhere. I don't know where he went. And that the demon took over Charles's body, and that these castings, and when we call them castings, like the best way I can describe it is them standing around in a circle, holding hands. Everybody has a part to say of the prayer, like the casting out prayer, whatever it is, right? And after that was done, that the demon should be cast out of Charles's body and Charles's body would die. Like that is what Chad is telling them will happen. So logical people that are here on this earth with our feet on the ground, not know like believing this, would know that like that's ridiculous. Like you're not going to kill somebody by chanting something and casting something out of them. But they believed it. And so it was really mainly like a few women that we haven't heard from a lot. Lori, Alex, Zulema, Melanie Gibb, and Melanie B, the niece. So like these are the people that are involved in these castings. So a very small group compared to the LDS church. And the first demon that took over Charles was called Ned Snyder.
Mhm.
Now, they tried
Yep.
to cast Ned Snyder out, and then they called Chad and was kind of like, "Hey, like nothing happened. What happened?" And he was like, "Oh, well, it must have been another demon got to a came in the body while the other one left, and now a new demon's there, and that new demon's name was Garrett." So then they do more castings. And after every time of these castings and it doesn't work, everyone's kind of like, well, what the fuck? Like, you told us that this was going to work. And then they did it for Garrett again. And then they were like, well, it didn't work again. And he said, oh, well, it was another demon that came into the body. Garrett left now. It's another one named Hiplos. He's in the body now.
He's very
And
strong. He's the strongest of the demons.
the strongest. And at this point is where they're like, well, we're going to have to take matters into our own hands because Chad's like, how many demons am I going to say? You know what I mean? Like, how many demons am I going to come up with at this point? So that is what happens when Charles is killed is by Alex, is because Chad kind of tells them that the only way to get rid of the demon is to unalive the body, like kill the body. What I find interesting though, and I just thought of this, I love when we have these conversations, is we know from Zulema that there's a very specific way to get rid of a body to make
Yes.
sure that the demon is gone. I don't really know, but they didn't do that to Charles.
No, they did not do that to Charles. They did not do that to Charles. But I wonder if
Hmm.
they talked about the way to get rid of the body after Charles was deceased.
I'm sure, but I'm just like, to me, that's like, if you're trying to get rid of, if your premise is like we're getting rid of demons, wouldn't you know the whole way to get rid of them?
The whole way.
You know what I mean? Like all the whole time.
Yeah. Well, the way that Chad and Lori explain the process, there are 7 steps, and this comes out in Zulema's testimony. And it's you have the order of the priesthood, you dispel them, you cast out, and this is the most important part because it becomes very relevant when we are going to segue into the bodies. Burn them. You burn the body to make sure there is no other option for a demon to come back into the body in the 2-minute window that exists. Then you escort or seal to take the demon out of the body. You seal it away, and then you expel, eject, reject, and purge. And that comes from, well, they allege that it comes from Matthew 8:16, which is casting out with his word, and Matthew 10:1, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out. Um,
Again,
so that
manipulating scriptures to fit your agenda, which is what
correct,
he did for the whole time.
correct.
So
So
they killed
that
Charles.
is, and during Zulema's testimony, they bring out her journal, and she has ovals drawn on them. The first oval has circles inside of it showing the multiple creations and worlds with that one person could come into. The first oval has 5 circles representing 5 worlds. The 5th creation is the lowest and the darkest world. These were the ones that Zulema had lived in. On the bottom is a circle representing the spirits who had been possessed. There is a 2-minute window where a demon can possess the body. The original spirit is in limbo, waiting for the body to be put to rest. Chad told her in one creation he had been the brother of Jesus, the brother of the big JC himself, and another that he was the Holy Ghost, and
He
that
was
Lori
the
was
Holy
his
Spirit. He was the
yeah, the Holy
Holy
Spirit.
Spirit.
This is where we're talking about aliens now. Lori was his companion on other planets. So they were aliens.
If you
They
thought
were
it couldn't get
aliens.
any crazier,
So
here it is.
it really we got a lot from these women.
So I'm just going to say the last thing that I think was important from Melanie Gibb, because again, like nothing really, was that when she went to go visit Lori, Lori told her that Tylee was in college and was staying on campus, but
Yes.
then they went to go walk around at the campus and didn't see Tylee. So that was weird. And that after Charles was killed, that Chad had visited Lori within 2 weeks of that, and that she said that there was happiness and excitement that Charles was dead. And I do want to make it clear that Melanie says that Lori knew about that Lori knew she was the beneficiary of the life insurance before Charles was killed. or that she said something about the life insurance that I was like, "That doesn't make any sense," that she knew it wasn't that she wasn't the beneficiary or something,
Yes, she
right?
says she wasn't aware that, or she was aware that he had changed his life insurance policy.
Right, 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 and but after so Melanie Gibb kind of gave her this, I don't know, like, this pass of, like, well, she couldn't have done it for the money because she knew, but we know that after Charles was killed, literally days after, she called the life insurance to get the life insurance money.
Right,
And then
right.
found out that she wasn't the beneficiary, and even has text messages to Chad and things like that saying that, like, "Oh my god, he must have changed it. I bet you it was Kay." Like, it proves that she didn't know that it wasn't that, so that was very, I don't know. It was one of those details that I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird detail, in my opinion, that she lied
Yes,
about.
and but it also is a good defense detail. Like, it's a good defense fact. And then one of my favorite questions on cross of Melanie Gibb was, the defense attorney asked her, "Were you as forgetful in preparing with the prosecution as you were on the stand here today?" And she was like, "Yep, I was." And I thought that that was the funniest question. I was like, "Whoa, okay, girl. So no one's gonna think you're credible, but cool, good for you." I think I laughed way too hard at that, but
Well, it was,
I
like,
think she
funny.
misunderstood the question.
Right, I think it was funny because she was so honest about it, but it was also, like, one of those things where, like, if you were gonna be super honest in any part of this, this one was probably where you should have said, like, "Well, I think my testimony matches up to what I said before." Like, something
Right.
along those
Not
lines
like,
instead of just
yes.
being like, "Yep,
I laughed so hard. I was like, you couldn't make this up." Like, that's
you
the
can't
perfect answer for a defense attorney. I was like, "Oh my god." I
you
would have
can't make
ended
any
there. I would have not asked any questions. I would have
oh,
been like, "Thank you.
case closed." Like, bye.
Done."
And
Done.
I think that's why he moved and I mean, I think it was smart where he moved to strike all of Melanie Gibbs' testimony because he was like, "The bitch said herself that she was forgetful." Like, you know what I mean? That none of this could be what she remembers because she couldn't even remember when she was telling the prosecution.
Correct.
So, like,
Correct.
whatever. Melanie
It
Gibb
was a
fucked us, guys, okay? She fucked it all
Yeah.
up.
She was not as great as, we had expected.
It's like an
The real
understatement.
MVP, Zulema, killed it,
Right.
slayed,
So,
brought the house
we're
down.
gonna talk about Zulema now because Melanie Gibb doesn't even deserve any more of our time. I hope that she steps on a Lego
Same.
because
2 Legos.
2 of them in a row.
2. Each foot.
Each foot. Bitch. The left one always hurts the most.
Yes.
Okay, so
We
we go
covered
into
a lot
Zulema.
of what Zulema said, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, and there's only a few things. So this is funny though because to me, Zulema's testimony was like thebomb.com, like all of it. One thing
Yeah.
that I didn't know was that Zulema has a prior criminal record, and they were
Yes.
discussing it, and she wanted her attorney there, and basically they said unless like she's not, if she were to plead the fifth, then he shouldn't be able to come in and advise her. But there was no indication that she was going to plead the fifth, and she definitely did not. So from what I'm assuming is they let her attorney be there in advisement because she didn't plead the fifth, correct?
So my understanding is that that attorney wasn't allowed there at all,
Okay.
um, because he's not admitted to practice in the state of Idaho.
Okay.
But I also can't imagine a situation in which, and I think it was a conviction from 25 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't anything
So
relevant to.
I can't imagine there being a situation in which there would be any sort of issue here of
Mhm.
incrimination. And if she pleads the fifth, she pleads the fifth. I don't really see a negative inference, really. I mean, juries love to hear that. They love when they're like, oh, they must be hiding something. They're pleading the fifth. But I don't, it's a conviction from 25 years ago that was set aside in 2015. So I
Right.
don't really think for a withheld judgment. Now, I don't know what a withheld judgment means. because every state is different. But I, I can't see it being super relevant to anything that she's going to be talking about here, unless it's a crime involving some type of moral turpitude, like lying or something like that. Um, so we'll see, because her cross examination only barely started and it'll be picking up tomorrow. So we'll see if it comes up, and then I'll be able to tell you. But it
Okay.
says,
So Russell, our prosecutor friend, said that they may have given her some type of like immunity in some way to, and he didn't say full immunity or anything. I think he said limited immunity or something like that so that she would feel comfortable. Like,
it says in our notes that she was given limited use immunity from 4 years ago.
mm,
So I guess when they were began investigating the case, and like at pretrial hearings and stuff, she might have been given limited use immunity.
that's what he said.
But I don't know what the conviction is, so I
Okay.
have no idea what it
Right.
is. So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see if she takes the fifth on anything, and then we'll be able to figure it out. But that's for next week's podcast. So
Right.
make sure you listen then.
Yeah, because we're going to be doing
Shameless
this
plug.
for all of it because we love this case. So, Zulema, we love Zulema. She gave us a lot of information. And so I want to talk about how Lori and Chad approach Zulema in this way, in a very sweet way, in a very like, I respect you way. Um, we know that you're wonderful. We believe in you. Basically, just like putting her on a pedestal, kissing her ass, and really making her feel really special. And at the conference, Zulema gives us kind of this picture and even told us a little bit more. So we know that Lori started flirting with Chad and like building him up. And then Zulema says that Lori turned on her like giggles and flirting and even
Yep.
offered to like watch Chad's table and sell his books for him while he went to go speak and helped him pack up and leave and like really fed into Chad's man ego here,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
Really
Absolutely.
appeased him. And so what I think, and I kind of described this last night, and I got this from like I put this together in from Zulema, really. Without her, I don't think I would have gotten here. Was I think that what we're looking at is Chad having this like I call it like we call it like a Manson complex where he's like thinks he's Charles Manson and he's going to start like this following in this cult and whatever. And then
Yes.
he sees this beautiful woman who comes up to him, starts flirting with him, and he tells her something insane, like we've been married for 7 lifetimes, like upon first meeting, and she eats it up. And so that brings his confidence level in what he's saying to 10 because he's like, oh, well, if she believes it, cool. And then she got everybody around them to also believe it. So he's sitting
Yep.
there like, oh my God, I am the savior. I am the one that's gonna, and so
The leader of the 144,000.
right. And Lori, though, she saw a respected author who was interested in her that she could use to her benefit of wanting to get rid of her family and get more money and do all of these horrible things. So they were both using each other for,
Absolutely.
different like different motivations. And it's just when Zulema said like read her whole testimony, I was like, okay, so that like solidified it for me because I thought, there was that little thing in the back of my head that was like, maybe she really is just like maybe she does have
Off.
DID, right? Like maybe she does have like something that is off with her brain and like she was in a psychosis or something. But I really once I heard this testimony or read it, I was like, no. Nope.
No, I think they both have these desires and issues, and then they just like it was like a lock and a key. They
Yep.
just fit, and that was it. They found each other and it clicked, and then terrible.
Zulema, oy. Um, so then Zulema talks about how Chad okay, this was really weird. And I caught this. So Chad invites Lori, himself, Lori, Zulema, and Melanie Gibb to a lunch to tell Zulema something. Like he's like, we're gonna tell you about, something very important, and they were gonna give her like her number or something, right? Like her D, if she was dark or she was light, and which scale she
Yes.
was on. So they invite everybody to this lunch. They get to the lunch and then they tell Zulema that they didn't want to tell her anymore because Melanie Gibb was there to hear it. And I'm like, "But you invited them all to lunch." Like you what? It's like that's like me inviting you and Amanda to lunch and then me saying I have to tell you something, Stephanie, and then saying to you, "Sorry, Stephanie, I can't tell you because Amanda's here." Like, why the fuck did I invite Amanda to the lunch then?
Right. Right.
It was like a form of manipulation, even in that, so that Zulema felt like lost trust in Melanie Gibb and then felt like she was gonna be above her and get to know
Right.
something that Melanie doesn't.
And then it made Melanie feel like she had to try harder for and strive for their love and affection and service them in a way to get back in their good graces. It's all a manipulation tactic. It's 100% manipulation tactic, gaslighting. It's all of that rolled up into one, and it accomplishes two things. It accomplishes something for Zulema, and it accomplishes something for Melanie.
Yep. And I just really that really showed me that the true manipulation of this. Because if I did that to you and Amanda, you would feel like, why doesn't Gianna want to say it in front of Amanda? And Amanda would feel like, well, why does Stephanie get to know? And like, what did I do not to know? Like, it would be a
Yep.
very
Yes.
tumultuous like situation. Obviously, I wouldn't do that because I'm not a moron to invite somebody that I don't want to hear something to a place.
Yep.
But and then so you brought this up to me before was what they told about Zulema's past life. Do you
Yes.
want to talk about that or do you
Yes.
want me to? Okay.
So in Zulema's past life, she was told by Chad and Lori that she was a 14-year-old teenage girl, right?
Mhm.
14?
Mhm.
14-year-old teenage girl, and Lori was her mother in a past life. And she was sexually assaulted and burned to death,
Dismembered.
dismembered. And that leads us into how specifically and identically Tylee's body was found,
Yeah.
also burned and dismembered.
Right. Okay, so this is where
And
we're going to put that trigger warning of
yes,
like we're going to talk about the children now. We're going to talk about what happened to them, and this is going to be we're going to end with this
yes,
section of it. Again, if you want to listen to or read all of Zulema or Melanie Gibbs testimony, it is in the boards app, and as well as reading about what happened to the kids is also there as well. um
yes.
because this is really really fucked up. Like it's
Yeah, there's no other way to describe it. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. So, if you have not had your breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or you have and you don't want to be sick, you could cut it off now and you didn't miss anything. Just look for the next podcast. But if you want to hear about how the bodies were discovered, this is the segue point to where we're going to talk about the bodies, but and how the children and what we know about thus far without the hearing from the medical examiner yet about the discovery of the children. Because it's interesting that Zulema is being told in a past life that her body was disposed of in the exact same manner as Lori's daughter, Tylee. Um, and we could start, I guess we'll start with Tylee's remains. Detective Hermosillo. Um, is the detective who talked about the discovery of the bodies of the children, um, and the subsequent arrest of Chad Daybell the same day as the discovery of JJ's body, because JJ's body was discovered first. They served a search warrant on Chad, and they began to search the bodies. And Chad, as he was sitting in his car making phone calls to Lori, who was in jail at the time, and to his lawyer, Mark Means, kept looking over his shoulder to a specific area of the property. So they searched along with the FBI ERT team, and they looked to, it was like under a tree, like a nice area with a fire pit. They began to dig and sift, and not even very far down, they found a basically the equivalent of a body bag, but it was really just a plastic bag, plastic black bag. And they cut through it, and they discovered the remains of JJ.
So okay, so we're talking about JJ first.
Yeah, I
Okay.
segued into JJ first
Okay.
because I figured, I'm sorry, I said Tylee first,
That's
but we're
okay.
gonna do JJ first because for timeline purposes, JJ is the
Right.
first body that they found.
Right. Okay.
Um, JJ's body had not decomposed too terribly at this point, so there was still hair on his head. So they were able to make an identification rather quickly, and that body was transported to the autopsy facility with the detective, and the detective then came back to the grounds to search for Tylee. Um, he was bound. There was a bag over his head, and he was also bound by his ankles and his hands, if I remember correctly.
They were like, yeah, they were like wrapped in duct tape, and like even his like jaw was like like from jaw to jaw, like line was like wrapped in duct tape. I mean, you can only conclude that he was duct taped with that bag put over his head and suffocated.
Right.
That way by, because they said that there was like bruising on him as well, kind of like like what if he tried to fight being bound, that's what, like, while he was alive, that's where that bruising would have come from. So
Horrible. Um, Also, so that's JJ. And as for Tylee, we know from what we know is that she was found in the pet cemetery. Um, and this is pretty graphic, but they found her remains in, I will describe it as, the, the, like the painter,
yeah,
like
yes, like it's a bucket,
a
like,
bucket,
but
like the painter's bucket, but it was neon green. All of her remains were found in a painter's bucket, um, dismembered and charred. I believe they said, I forget the word they used,
globs.
but globs. Yes, globs was the word, um, of Tylee.
Wha-
Um, Gianna gets very upset when we talk about this, which is why I'm talking about it.
yeah, it just is like, I don't know, I can't even fathom doing that to somebody that I hated with my whole being.
Yes. Um, From my experience in this world, the criminal justice world, I don't expect a cause of death for us on Tylee based on the status of her remains. Um, I do expect a cause of death on JJ, but I do not expect us to get a cause of death on Tylee. It will be in the manner of homicide, but I'm not sure we're going to get more than that. I don't think we're going to get like an estimated time of death or anything like that as well, because I think it's going to be too hard to estimate with the status of the remains, which is unfortunate for a number of reasons. Because number one, she deserves as much justice as everybody else, but it is clear that the level of anger towards her disposal of the body was significantly greater than the anger just done towards JJ. or they just wised up in how they were going to dispose of a body. But either way, both of those children suffered immensely. And we also learned that Chad's phone also pinged at the burial sites at the time they believed the bodies were being buried and or burned. So it wasn't just Alex's phone that pinged; it was also Chad's phone that pinged, which is new information to us. Um, that's about the discovery of the bodies. I don't really want to say much more about it because it's very
Yeah.
um, upsetting, for
And
lack of a better word.
very, very graphic, very like in Detective Hermosillo, I'm sure it was very, very hard for him to even get these words out, but I'm very glad that he used the words that he did and kind of painted the picture that he did, because it's one of those things that sends, I even have him now, like chills down your spine, and that's
Yes,
really what these jurors need to hear. These horrible, graphic, disgusting details to see what a horrible, disgusting human their mother, who was supposed to protect them, is. Like,
right. It
so
was that was the probably, you know, the so but I also want to note one thing that happened during this testimony that I think is important to point out is that Lori attempted to not be present during this portion of the testimony. Her lawyers made a motion to the court under, I believe it's Idaho Code ICR 43, to not be present during the portion of the testimony in which the pictures were being shown of the remains and things like that. The judge denied the application. There are grounds for her to make that application, but a judge can overrule that application, which is what Judge Boyce did. So she was ordered to remain in the courtroom during this portion of the testimony.
I'm so glad that he did that. I truly am glad that, when you're accused of something like this, whether you're guilty or not, you're enough to be accused to sit there and listen to something like this. And if the jurors have to sit there and listen to this, then I believe that Lori should have had to. So, you know what I mean? Like, I think that that's the way that Judge Boyce also thought it. Like,
He gave it some thought. He
yeah,
reviewed the case law over lunch, that the defense and the prosecution both provided. And I'm not, obviously, I don't practice in Idaho, so I'm not familiar with what the case law is, but I did do a cursory look at what it is, and like what they were arguing. And they were the arguments are strong for both sides. So, it came down to how Judge Boyce felt about the situation, and he clearly wanted her there, so she stayed. I'm sure that will not be the only time this application is made during this proceeding. Probably during the medical examiner's testimony and the pictures that are going to be shown during there, the same application will be made. But I'm knowing what we know about this judge, I envision the same response.
yeah, I was worried, when that happened, the only thing that I was worried about was, I know that they have said that this is Judge Boyce's, like, first really big murder trial and a very public murder trial, and I thought maybe that would make a difference, but it seems like it doesn't. He has his morals, his standards, his ethics, and what he believes in and how he wants to run his courtroom, and I just, like, give him props for sticking to that no matter what the situation is, no matter how public it is, matter how many people are there, whatever. I think that he just said, like, this is the decision I would make always, and I'm going to make it here too. And
Yeah.
so that was great.
I think he's
He's
doing a
doing it
pretty
great.
decent job, honestly. I haven't really seen anything that I really disagree with thus far. Um and there have been some tough choices and tough, motions to decide. So I've been really impressed on what I've been seeing from him. And I've been impressed with the defense and the prosecution. I really have no complaints. I think both sides are comporting themselves very well on a very difficult case. So everybody's sort of handling it as well as can be expected in this type of situation.
Right, and I mean, like, think about what they were given to work with,
I
guys. The
know,
defense
I
and the
know. I mean,
prosecution, so, like
zombies and demons and
I know.
aliens, like, it's like
Yeah,
Wizard of Oz.
I know. So, I'm interested to see what happen we still only have I mean, we have 8 weeks. This is the 1st week, really, or I mean, I don't know if they count juries, so this is the 2nd week, so we still have 8,
Yeah,
7, 6 weeks left to hear
yeah,
from. So we still have so much information to come, and we will be referencing back to, I'm sure, to other things.
yes.
So yeah, that's really we just wanted to give you guys our thoughts on what stood out to us. What are the key moments that stood out to us, and a lot of it, and I will say that a lot of it was stuff that we knew.
Right.
We already knew that about the case. So that's why we were like, well, they could read it for themselves if they want to, because it's all going to be reiterated then at that point. Um, so yeah, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's good for now. We'll just keep bringing you guys what we think is super important, and if there's anything that you guys want to see, you just let us know, and we'll keep bringing you the best info that we can.
We'll keep on keeping on.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right, guys. I hope you have a great rest of whatever part of the day you're listening to this in, and we will see you soon.
Yes, I hope to see you guys soon. All right. Have a good
Bye.
day.